Welcome back to Exotic Car Playplace, everyone. Hey, you guys ever wonder why used BMWs are just so cheap? Let's talk about it now. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Mark with Exotic Car Playplace. And so let's just cut right to the chase. Look at all these BMWs down this row. The first reason has to do with the fact of lease returns. Here we have X cars. We have 5 Series, 6 Series, 3 Series, 2 Series, everything under the sun. All the way down there, you notice all these cars. Out of this entire group, guaranteed at least half will likely see a lease. When that lease is up, 2 years, 3 years down the road, what generally happens with that, they hit the market, they flood the market. A lot of them wind up at auctions, some of them wind up at the dealers like this. And so what ends up happening is these cars return to market with 30, 40, 50,000 kilometers on them. And of course, then the dealers are stuck trying to manage those. So they have to provide incentives, certified pre-owned, they'll give extra extended warranties, prices drive down, and it makes it even worse for a person trying to sell their vehicle on the used car market privately. If you have a brand new car, a BMW you bought new, now you're trying to sell it 2 years later, what does that mean? You're competing with the dealers who are offering these extra incentives. So a lot of times people buying a 3 or 4 year old BMW aren't interested in going private market because they don't get the extra tidbits. And as a result, prices drive down, pushes all the prices down, again, at the dealer level or at the private level. And unfortunately, BMWs are really susceptible to this phenomenon. So the second reason why used BMWs are just so cheap has to do with the fact that the initial price is actually elevated, probably above and beyond what it's normally typically worth. But let's look at some of these vehicles. So let's start right here. What do we have? A BMW X4M, hot vehicle, lots of technology. This has turbocharging and is an absolute beast. Beautiful vehicle, absolutely. Right here we have a new 330. Awesome vehicle, new technology, digital display, lots of things going on there. High performance 4-cylinder engine. What do we have here? An M2 competition, absolutely beautiful car. Obviously with flares, performance, big brakes, you've got wings, you've got the wonderful S55 engine under the hood. These things are absolute animals in terms of performance. And of course, being a BMW, any of these, you're looking at an M8 competition, or how about a new M5 competition? The problem with this is there's so much research and development, the technology buried under the hood in terms of you've got twin turbocharging, 600 plus horsepower here. Of course, research, development, you've also got technicians that have to work on these cars, and those technicians have to be highly trained. They also wear fancy jumpsuits, and that all costs money. You notice inside the dealership, there's marble floors. They've got free coffee. So the initial price to support all of this, new technology, performance, marble floors, and all of the amenities that the dealers provide you, cost money. So when the vehicles sell used, it doesn't matter on the used car market. There's such a huge differential. And it's that huge differential that looks like a mass depreciation, which it is. But a lot of that extra fluff in there to cause the vehicles to cost so much money in the first place is really not necessary. And as a result, prices are high initially, then they settle down to a place where they're probably more likely and realistically worth. So of course, it seems to be a much bigger difference. In reality, these vehicles are just overinflated to begin with. And so the next reason why used BMWs are just so cheap, let's take a look. When we're looking at X models like this or like this, it doesn't matter. Any of these BMWs get very expensive to maintain. So annual service costs are very, very high. Every time you have to take this vehicle in, it's going to cost you $1,000 plus. There's no way around it. Even if you get a check engine light on the dashboard here, all of a sudden something goes awry, something's not working quite right. You get a CEL, a check engine light on the dash. Just to get the dealer to look at it, they're gonna charge you $250 thereabouts. Some dealers a little less, some dealers a little more, just to plug in their fancy little tuner and read what's going on under the hood. And that's unfortunate, because even if you, the owner of the vehicle, have your own little portable reader, you plug it in, you know what the problem is, you won't tell them, they won't listen to you. You basically take your vehicle in anyway, and they're gonna charge you up the chute to actually plug in and do what takes to the total time of about 7 minutes from the time they grab the keys from the vehicle, drive it around into the service bay, take it in, and actually scan it, maybe all of 10 minutes. And unfortunately, they're gonna charge you $250 diagnostic fee. And that hurts. People get sucked in, they don't like that. It feels like you're getting greased. The other thing, what ends up happening is anytime you just do standard servicing, even an oil change, you can't get out of here for less than $250 if you're taking it to the dealer. So people get really scared about that. And honestly, people work hard for their money, so they don't want to get rooked. But there's benefit to you and me as we buy a used BMW, even though all those costs are high. if you're a little bit creative, or if you find a small shop somewhere, or even if you're a crafty do-it-yourselfer, you can save a huge amount of money and drive the car of your dreams. After all, these are seriously still one of the best cars on the road. Any of the BMW M cars are phenomenal buys. So it's great value. Appreciation hurts, and the second owner sees some of the benefits. But that's why these vehicles are so cheap, because high service costs. So the next reason why used BMWs are just so cheap goes around to the way they're constructed. A lot of people fear the worst, and of course there's a lot of fear mongering going on the internet. Some of it's valid, some of it's not so much. But let's talk about it, and that's plastic, plastic, plastic. Lots of plastic in these vehicles. Plastic is highly used in any brand these days. It doesn't matter if you're driving a Honda or a Lexus or a BMW, or whether you're driving even a Dodge pickup truck. Now, whether it's a wing like that's plastic, the bumpers are plastic, the spoilers are plastic, everywhere. There's plastic in the interior, half the dashboard is plastic, there's plastic everywhere. But unfortunately, there's plastic in places that sometimes don't work, and it's under the hood. Under the hood of these cars, you get plastic intake manifolds, you can get plastic water pumps, plastic cooling lines, and plastic hoses. Plastic, and of course, a lot of that plastic, even on plastic oil pans on certain models, creates situations where they warp, they twist, they crack, they split from the engine heat. And a lot of these vehicles now, because they're turbocharged, whether it's a 4-cylinder turbo, or whether it's, for example, the B58 engine has a single turbo. B48 engines, it's a turbo 4. So a lot of these engines have turbos. Turbos create lots of heat. Now these engines are actually known to be quite dependable, these modern B58s. But if you go a generation or two ago, you've got the N55 or the N54 before it was the first attempt at twin turbocharging a 6-cylinder engine. And the problem is all of these modern BMWs are using plastic under the hood. So what you get is accelerated wear, cracking of plastics, leaks, brakes, engine lights, and expensive repairs, because just because it's plastic has nothing to do with the fact that it should be cheap, because it's not cheap. BMW and cheap just don't mix. So unfortunately, that can be very, very expensive. Now, if you're a great do-it-yourselfer, or you have a shop that doesn't want to rip you off or bend you over, you can get a phenomenal deal. You can buy yourself an awesome used BMW for a great deal, because there is so much widespread fear-mongering. Some of it's valid, but again, get around some of that and you can get yourself a phenomenal vehicle. There are some better engines too than others, by the way. If you get the N63, which is the twin-turbo V8 that you often find in many of the X5s, or 5 Series, 7 Series, and they're with the designation 5.0, for example, those have that N63, and they have more problems with heat in the hot V, because the turbos are mounted between the V of the engine, causes even more problems. For example, excessive oil consumption. So there are certain problematic engines. Just look down this aisle here. 5 Series, how about a 4 Series? How about another 4 Series convertible? How about another 4 Series and another 4 Series, and the list goes on and on and on as we go down the aisle. The point of the matter is there's incentives for all of these vehicles. To buy them new, these dealers have the power and the backing to sell you a vehicle for a very, very small portion. 0% for 2 years, 0.5% for 3 years, 0.75. The list goes on, and the reality is people can't deny it. So they want to buy a new vehicle because the incentive is so low. That can always work in your favor. Why would you buy a 1-year-old vehicle that's maybe $10,000 less, but the interest rate to borrow from the bank is actually, say, 2.5%, 3%, when you can get one of these brand new vehicles for 0.5% or 0.25%? At the end of the day, it may actually work out more in your favor, particularly if you run the course of the loan period. You can actually save money buying a new vehicle as opposed to buying that slightly used vehicle, thinking you're going to save some money, get a great deal, and be thrifty. You can actually end up spending more. So the incentives are there for you to buy a new vehicle. Sure, if you wait till a 5-year-old vehicle, you can get great deals, because if you buy a used BMW that's, say, in that 4-5 year range, those vehicles now are down to about 35, 40, 50% if you're driving an M car. They're depreciated so badly that at that point, it's worth your time to go to the used vehicle. But by that time, most people are really scared to buy a 5 or 6 year old BMW, and then often it's just not even in the question. But for those that aren't scared, honestly, you can get a phenomenal deal on a 5-year-old BMW at 40% of its original MSRP. Think about that. Think about a new M4. That car was $110,000 Canadian. And guess what? In about 5 years' time, you can get that car for about $50,000 to $60,000. That's less than half of its original value. phenomenal deal. And in many cases, a lot of those M cars are only driven in the summertime, so a lot of times they're well looked after, they're not abused, often they show very, very well, and you can get yourself a phenomenal deal. So that's why those vehicles drive down so much, is mainly because the incentives on new vehicles are so aggressive, and of course, people are just scared to buy a used BMW. That said, and you're shopping for a used BMW, you're probably going to want to find out which are the most reliable BMW engines. Right there, you're going to want to click that link. It's going to tell you all about it. Hope to see you on the next one. Catch you real soon. Bye-bye.